Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Wednesdays, a world's finest collaboration between myself and Michael K. Korvac Saga Vaughan, in which we talk about Marvel Epic Collections on Wednesdays, which is New Comic Book Day in the United States. The Epic Collection Run is a series of big $40 paperback reprint volumes in full color on high-quality paper that Marvel Comics has been doing of their vast archive of back issues. And they're really, really good. The Epic collections are really good. You not only get everything in color, the Essential Marvel line gave you those reprints for a lot less money, but with no color. But you also get, they tend to throw in a lot of adjacent stuff as well. And they're not bound by strict chronology. The Marvel Masterworks series, the ongoing Marvel Masterworks series, is reprinting things in straight chronological order. But the Epic collections feel free to bounce around if they want to, and maybe to get some of the more popular runs or chunks of runs in before they get around to the stuff nobody wants to see reprinted. And at first, Michael and I were going to do a different Epic collection each week, but it seemed more convivial for a kind of dialogue if we do the same one. He has a huge collection of Marvel Epic collections, just huge. He has a huge collection of hardcover volumes as well. Oh my God, his Conan hardcover reprint volume is enough to make your eyes bleed. But he has a huge Epic collection volume, so I thought maybe it would be best to let him lead. You know, let him pick whichever Epic collection strikes his fancy that week. And quite a few of you bloodthirsty little marmots, were also interested in whether or not Michael and I would disagree, and what would happen if, instead of acting in unison, the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage were in opposition to each other. Nothing BookTube likes more than a good scrap. And today, today you're getting a lot closer to that than ever before. Because today, Michael picked this volume, the Epic collection of the Hulk, titled The Hulk Must Die. And that cover, that is a Jack Kirby cover showing the Hulk doing something with the Greek god Hercules. I don't know what. I don't know what's happening on that cover. I honestly don't have any idea. But one way or another, it gives you a little peek into a recurring theme in this volume. This volume reprints a long string of the Hulk when he was one half of a comic called Tales to Astonish, because his own book petered out, and that was kind of rare for an original Stan Lee creation, especially an original Stan Lee Jack Kirby creation. Fantastic Four did not peter out. The X-Men didn't peter out until long afterwards, and limped along for a long time before Cockerman Claremont revived it. But Thor just got stronger and stronger in readership, even with originally some really crappy artwork. Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, as Michael points out in his video, it took Stan Lee virtually no time at all to get his feet underneath him with those volumes, to know what he was doing with those characters, but not the Hulk. And readers could tell, readers reacted, and the book sort of folded, sort of petered. But Stan Lee loved the Hulk, because for a long time before Stan Lee was writing Marvel Comics superheroes, he was writing Marvel Comics monster comics. For a long time, him and Jack Kirby, what I would argue is one of the greatest creative collaborations anywhere in American history, I hesitate to say it because I know Michael Vaughan will have a different opinion on the subject, but for a long time they were completely wasting those prodigious talents on monster comics. Who on earth, other than Michael K. Vaughan, is interested in monster comics? They are just about as dumb as comics get, until we talk about dating comics, love comics, and Lee and Kirby did a whole bunch of those as well. Monster comics had a vogue, and Marvel did a lot of them, and the one spawn of that incredibly dreary creative run that you will know by name is a monster they both dreamed up called Groot. But other than that, virtually nothing at all. And the Hulk, when the Hulk started, was very much Stan Lee trying to merge those two worlds. Dr. Bruce Banner is trying to urge a ne'er-do-well named Rick Jones off of an atomic testing ground when a bomb goes off, an experimental gamma bomb goes off. And instead of incinerating him, or fatally irradiating him so that he dies horribly a week later, it gave him superpowers. It irradiated his body. The modern retconned explanation is that it triggered a mutation inside him already. And suddenly, in those early issues, when night fell, Bruce Banner transformed into a grayish monster called the Hulk, who was very much closer to Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde than to anything that we see in this volume, for instance. Not even close. In those early issues, the Hulk was massively strong, massively powerful, and had a kind of id intelligence to Banner's superego. So they were kind of alter egos to each other, but the Hulk was not just a bestial child. And he wasn't all powerful either. And I know this is going to make me sound hipsterish, but that original conception of the Hulk had real dramatic potential. It's very rare that you will find Stan Lee at this say 25-year period where his creativity was absolutely at its peak. Because he had 25 years after this where his creativity is best not spoken of. And he had 25 years before this where he was churning out westerns, romances, monster stuff, war propaganda. But in this 25-year period, his powers were at their peak. And it's unusual for Stan Lee in this period when his powers are at their peak to misjudge when he's hit a winning formula, to doubt himself. One of the things I like best about Stan Lee as a creator is how little he ever doubted himself. Michael K Vaughan, in his video, I'll leave a link to his video down below, he mentions that it took Stan Lee almost no time at all. It might have been rocky beginnings here and there in the first issue of the Fantastic Four, the first few issues of the Fantastic Four. The Thing is a bitter misanthrope. Benjamin J. Grimm is not the ever-loving blue-eyed idol of millions. Instead, he's a monster. So it took a little bit of finessing like that in order for Stan Lee to figure out what he wanted to do and then do it, and he went with his instincts. I think pretty much the only example, one of the only examples I can come up with, Michael K. Vaughan mentions it as well, is Spider-Man, who was pretty much perfectly Spider-Man from the beginning. But with the Hulk, Stan Lee originally had a very good template. That is a very good template. Maybe not transforming at night. Maybe the transformation should probably still be linked to emotion, to rage. But transforming from Bruce Banner into a very much more powerful version of Bruce Banner, who doesn't have his limitations, doesn't have his morality, doesn't have his timidity. That is very interesting. And Marvel has gone back and flirted with that. The Hulk comic book had a long period where where the writer, was it Peter David? Michael would actually know. I don't actually remember. I don't read the Hulk. And we'll be getting to that. But there was some writer, it might have been Peter David, actually decided to revive that gray Hulk who has a perfectly functioning intellect, and got a lot of really good stories out of it. Stories that are much better than anything in this volume. Because in this volume, the Hulk's comic book was canceled, and Stan Lee was very affectionate towards the character and wanted to bring him back. And brought him back as one half of a comic book called Tales to Astonish. And the other half of that comic book for a long time was Prince Namor the Submariner. And I bought those issues. I bought them when they came out. I still feel weird about that because I'm not a Hulk fan at all. Not at all. But I bought those issues of Tales to Astonish because I'm very much a Prince Namor fan. And some of the storylines that were happening in the Prince Namor half of the magazine then were incredibly good. Just incredibly good. Art-wise, script-wise, everything. Just incredibly good. I read it for that. And I told my friends at the time at Tro's dry goods store, I said, I'm only reading it for this. I had friends say, well, can you cut out the Hulk pages and give them to me? Because I don't care about Prince Namor. I want to read that, but I don't want to spend 12 cents when you already have the thing and you're just going to ignore it. I believe, I hesitate to say this because it's so bitter, I believe that the entire collection of those Tales to Astonish that I could probably sell for a few $1,000s now, I think I just gave them to a Hulk fan back then. Because I figured, you want these more than I do, and I don't want to own comic books where I only read one half of them, so go ahead, take them. Anyway, by the time this volume collects a huge number of those Tales to Astonish appearances by the Hulk, where he fights Hercules, he fights the Silver Surfer, he fights, you name it, and he fights it. With a whole bunch of artists, Michael points out very approvingly the wonderful artwork of Marie Severin. I think it's almost temptation to get this volume for that. And if I'm tempted for Marie Severin's artwork, I'm even more tempted for the absolutely sublime artwork of Gil Kane, who has a few issues in here, and they are wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Gil Kane is one of my favorite comic book artists. And when he does the Hulk and fighting the Abomination, you can feel every panel. It's just wonderful. But all those things flit in and out here. The stories are bad. They are obviously left-handed exercises. And even if they weren't, they underscore a problem with the character in this new, slightly revamped. Michael points out this is the Hulk that we all know. And he's right. This is a monster who is a preschool level intellect. He mainly says puny humans and Hulk will smash. He's constantly talking about how no one will catch the Hulk, no one will beat the Hulk, no one's stronger than the Hulk, all that sort of stuff, over and over again. And there's a kind of brutal brain damage pathos to it. The world is constantly misunderstanding him. He says, or the narrative tells us, that the world is constantly misunderstanding this man brute in a world he never made. I've never understood that, because when the Hulk loses his temper, he flattens whole cities. So the world is not misunderstanding him. The world is not misunderstanding him at all. They have his number perfectly. but I was reading. I mean, I didn't completely ignore the Hulk parts of my Tales to Astonish issues. I would read them, and I would think, how can anybody like this? Talk about a one-note character. This is almost as bad as the Flash. He's fast. Okay. He's big and green and angry. and eventually, in every encounter, he is going to win through physical force. Okay, got it. He can't learn anything. He can't change or develop. He's always going to be a gigantic, 7-foot-tall, half-ton, 6-year-old. So, to put it mildly, I don't think I've ever actually flipped through this epic collection. I know I've seen it in my Newbury Comics, my local Newbury Comics. But to put it mildly, I would have no interest in doing so, except maybe Gil Kane artwork. But this isn't all Gil Kane art. If this was a whole volume of Gil Kane artwork, or even, God forbid, a whole volume of Marie Severin artwork, then I would probably do it. But it's not. It's not. It bounces all over. The artistic register is completely different. And in addition to that, I am constantly being asked to care about this protagonist when I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's possible to do. No matter what he's doing with Hercules on the cover there, I don't think it's possible to do. I mean, the gimmick for Stan Lee was to pit the Hulk against, whoever. The Hulk fights, and then whoever. Is it Thor? Is it the Submariner? Is it the Thing? Is it Hercules? Is it the Silver Surfer? There are a fairly large number of Marvel characters who I think could easily beat the Hulk. Thor, I think, would be one of them. Doctor Strange would certainly be one of them. I would argue the Silver Surfer as well. Probably a few others, but it never happens that way. The gimmick, the get-out-of-jail-free card that Stan Lee kind of quasi-invented was that the Hulk gets stronger the more angry he gets. So that if, for instance, he's fighting Hercules, let's say, according to the greatest book ever written in the history of mankind, I am, of course, referring to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, the deluxe edition. According to that book, Thor and Hercules have what's called Class 100 strength, which means they can lift, that is bench press, more than 100 tons. We don't know exactly how much more, but more than 100 tons. And in the same official handbook of the Marvel Universe, the Deluxe Edition, we're told that the Hulk can bench press 85 to 90 tons in his normal, unagitated state. In other words, in his normal, unagitated state, he's weaker than Hercules. But if you get him mad, that number changes. It goes up and up and up and up. And in the best Hulk storylines that I have seen, usually that rage strips away even the 6-year-old's intellect and just makes this a force of nature that just wants to destroy things. Which is why I have always thought this particular Hulk, I'm not talking about the original Hulk, the one with gray skin. He's gone for good. I'm talking about this particular Hulk, who is the movie version of the Hulk. He is the Hulk we all know. I have always thought that this particular Hulk, who is always misunderstood and sometimes flies into rages in which not only does his intellect disappear, but his power level goes up, I've always thought that that Hulk was far more effective, not as a character in the Marvel Universe, but as a thing that happens to the other characters in the Marvel Universe. Michael mentions an appearance of the Hulk in a great, I think it was a 2-part episode or issue of the Fantastic Four, where the Hulk goes on a rampage. The Hulk used to go on epic rampages. In fact, some writers in the Marvel bullpen were told, don't overuse that. Give the Hulk adventures. He goes on a massive, eyes up in the back of the head, uncontrolled rampage, rarely. I like that idea. I think that is effective, far more effective than the adventures of, a misunderstood 700-pound Romeo, one way or another. Marvel very seldom does that anymore. The Hulk is now, for better or worse, treated in much different ways. I didn't hear Michael in his video talk about whether or not he reads the Hulk now or read the Immortal Hulk run that I think just ended. He tends to confine his Epic Wednesdays to specifically talking about back issues. I don't know if he collects current issues. I certainly would not collect the Hulk. The last time I did that was the last time that a Marvel writer embraced the idea of the Hulk going on a full-blown rampage. And that was something called World War Hulk, where the Hulk is enraged because of an injustice done to him, comes back to Earth from the planet where the injustice was done, and goes on a rampage against Marvel superheroes to eventually destroy them all. This was in a very convenient period. There are always very convenient periods in Marvel continuity, like for instance Civil War, where Thor is not in the continuity for whatever reason. Because of events in his own book, there is no current Thor in the continuity. That would have changed World War Hulk very much. It would have changed Civil War very much. But in the case of World War Hulk, it was drawn, I don't remember who wrote it. It was drawn by John Romita Jr. Epic, incredible visuals by John Romita Jr. Just amazing. Where, one by one, the Hulk fights his way through Marvel superheroes. He doesn't even bother with the small fry, like Spider-Man or Daredevil. So instead, you're wondering, well, okay, you're going to get a long set-piece battle between him and Black Bolt of the Inhumans. You're going to get a long set-piece battle between him and the Thing. The battle in World War Hulk between the Hulk and Hercules, which ought to last a long set piece, happens in one panel basically off screen. He fights the Fantastic Four. He fights Doctor Strange. It's a terrific story. You can go back to it over and over again because it's this idea of the Marvel superheroes just needing to contend with this thing that erupts in their midst. Very much along the lines of that great scene in, is it Captain America Winter Soldier, where William Hurt's General Thunderbolt Ross is taking the Avengers to task in the movie. He's taking them to task for how much collateral damage they do whenever they confront evil. They wipe out whole cities. And in that confrontation, I think it's in Winter Soldier, he says, tell me something, where are Thor and Banner right now? You don't know. You have no idea. Two individuals who have enough power to wreak destruction on the face of the earth, and you can't even account for them. Something along those lines informs what I consider to be some of the best Hulk storylines, where it's not so much about him, it's about how other people react to him. But you don't get that in these issues. In these issues, you get all sorts of monster world tearjerkers about how nobody understands the Hulk. Nobody can beat the Hulk. Nobody understands him. Nobody can calm him down. When the focus, I know that Michael K Vaughan will probably disagree, but the focus in the Hulk stories ought to be Dr. Banner, not the huge green rage monster that he turns into. One way or another, those of you bloodthirsty little marmosets who wanted a little conflict between Michael K Vaughan and myself, you got it, because he loves this. And according to him, the Hulk iteration, the larger Hulk storylines that follow immediately after these issues, some of his favorite stuff in the Hulk mythos. And I'm sure he'll get to them, and I hate them too. But here's hoping that next week the epic collection that he picks is one that I can get behind. That would be great, if one that I could get behind. I'm not going to give him any hints. Thor. We'll just see if random chance causes that to happen. But in the meantime, that's your world's finest epic collaboration for today. The Hulk Must Die. To which I say, if only. I've caused enough trouble, so I will go. Thank you.